Armchair Crew Chief. I want to officially welcome you to Championship Week. We have racing going on in Phoenix next week for all three of the major series, Camping World, Xfinity, and Cup. And we just came off a very crazy Cup and Xfinity race at Martinsville. So we'll recap those, but let's go ahead and get into a little bit of news. Very, very little short news here. So, we have news from DGR. As it was expected back when Kyle Busch made the switch over to RCR, that David Gilliland Racing will be switching over to Toyota. They are pretty much swapping with Kyle Busch Motorsports, and looks like that, and they're going to rebrand themselves as Tricon. So their drivers are going to have a rotating Toyota driver, and then they will be running Taylor and Tanner Gray as well as Corey Heim. So if you're thinking about it, somebody that's been racing the number one truck for DGR has been Hailie Deegan. She is now out of a ride for 2023. I did see some news unofficially that she should be going into Xfinity next year, which that'll be a good change for her. I think that she's better fitted for the cars, not the trucks, just going back to her history running ARCA. And we'll see what happens there. She fared fairly well out there with the Xfinity cars at Vegas, so I think there's a lot of potential there that can just explode, and she can go and be the next Danica Patrick without the, I hate to say it, poor driving of Danica Patrick. So we'll see what happens there. Next, we have some news coming out of Europe. The Euro Series, the NASCAR Whelen Euro Series is going to be running an Arctic race in Finland next year. This will be the first NASCAR sanctioned race on ice. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be fun. I think this would probably be a lot more interesting than running the Coliseum like Cup Car is going to do for the Clash yet again. So, I don't know. Hopefully they show it over here. I don't know if they will. I'll probably try and find it somewhere online to watch it because I think it's going to be cool. But that is kind of our big news going in the championship racing, championship week here. So as I was stating before, we have the Camping World Truck Series. They did not run last weekend. They did not run at Martinsville. So they're going to be running Saturday afternoon at Phoenix. And your drivers that are in that are going to be Ty Majeski, Zane Smith, Ben Rhodes, and Chandler Smith. I mean, Ben Rhodes won it last year. We'll see if he can repeat. Ty Majeski's been hot. He's won the last 2 of the 3 races. And the other guys have been running obviously well if they're running top 4 in the playoff standings. So we'll see what happens. That will be one to look forward to. Truck Series is always one of those races that they usually have a lot of wrecks just because of the way the trucks are and the level of skill that's in the trucks. I mean, that's like your AA teams, not even AAA. I would call Xfinity AAA if we want to compare it to baseball. So that's being said. Moving forward, we had some wild finish on Saturday. So we had AJ Allmendinger fighting for a spot. Brandon Jones was fighting for a spot. And Justin Allgaier was fighting for a spot. They were the big guys that were fighting for spots in this race here to get on. And can't forget about Sam Mayer and Austin Hill. Henrik was also in there fighting for that spot. But, going back and looking at it, it was a rough run for Kaulig. Kaulig had some hard times there. So just going on to everything, AJ Allmendinger, as I was saying, Kaulig had some rough time. Allmendinger, his car was just not running the way that he could. And I know I said last podcast, I think he was the guy that was going to be able to come out here and win it, and he didn't have the stuff, unfortunately. Ty Gibbs, even Noah Gragson, you even had some Austin Hill making a few spots, and then Brandon Jones. They were all running up in the top, and it was some good racing. You had some, bouncing off each other, but these cars are meant to do that, and they had some fun doing it. It didn't get a little dicey until the very end of the race, where we had a couple restarts, quite a few restarts, just either people losing it, spinning out. And they had one time they wrecked so many cars in the back that, man, it looked like a parking lot. But just going forward, so we go to our final restart of the race. You had up front Brandon Jones, you had Ty Gibbs. They were the ones kind of duking it out for that win at Martinsville. Brandon Jones gets past, and I mean they were banging off each other this whole few restarts that they had. Brandon Jones gets past Ty Gibbs. He's leading. They're coming into turn 4. And next thing you know, instead of trying to just barely bump him on the side or kind of get under him and loosen up the air, Ty Gibbs goes and runs right in the back of his car and just wrecks his teammate to win the race. Wrecks his teammate and knocks him out of the playoffs. Brandon Jones was up there and he could have finished right up in the front and actually made the 4 because I think he only needed like a top 5 finish, something like that, and he would have made it. But Ty Gibbs had other plans. Ty Gibbs came out and said in the interview that he didn't mean to wreck him. I think that was a lie. The fans didn't like what he did. Everybody was booing him when he got out of his car, booing him whenever he was on the winner circle, victory lane. You heard chants coming out, "Thank you, Grandpa." And he made a lot of enemies that day, Saturday. He made a lot of enemies. His teammate came out and said, I'm glad I'm going to junior motorsports and not being around him. So, I mean, even that comment, one could speculate that he's been handed the silver spoon, which obviously we've seen, but a lot more than we know and can see. So, I feel bad for Brandon Jones on that. We'll see what happens. Your championship 4 is looking like Noah Gragson, Ty Gibbs, Josh Berry, Justin Allgaier. 3 JRM, 1 JGR. Where it could have been Noah Gragson, Josh Berry, Ty Gibbs, and Brandon Jones, 2 and 2. But I think now Ty Gibbs has got a target on his back. I don't think it's going to fare too well, even when he goes up to Cup Series, which, unofficially we all know that he's probably going into that 18 car next year, which, hey, I don't know about that anymore. I wouldn't want to be his teammate. I wouldn't want to be driving that 20 and that 19, the 11 car because, he doesn't care if you're a teammate or not. You kind of see that with Denny Hamlin, the way he races now, so maybe they'll fit well together. Who knows? So, another thing that kind of stuck with a lot of people with Ty Gibbs and this whole wreck, and this thing took over NASCAR up until you hear about what happened in Cup Series. Ty Gibbs came out. He made himself sound like the victim. He was just trying everything. I'll give it to Ty. He stuck to his guns. He stuck to his comments and stayed the same. But come on, dude, you can't drive like that. He did that earlier. I believe it was earlier this year or last year. He's driven through people and wrecked them. I call it the Austin Dillon of Xfinity because Austin Dillon did that to get his win this year. He drove right through the guy and to get the win. That's not cool. So, Phoenix Saturday evening in the night is going to pose for a good race. I think it's going to be a Chevrolet on top. I don't know. I'd like to see Noah win it, but I think it's going to be a Chevrolet on top, especially with the bullseye that the 54 is going to have on his back. So that was the big thing that happened Saturday. And if you think things couldn't get any more interesting, we get into the Cup race. Now, I was watching some of the recaps. I wasn't able to fully sit down and watch the race in its entirety. So I'm going based off of what I heard from live that it was fairly boring of a race. I've kind of felt that way about a lot of the Cup car racing this year because there's not been a lot of passing, unless it's on restarts or it's been, you're passing people off of pit road. That's what I see is a lot of the passing going on. They did make some changes, I believe it was last week or the week before, where we had a few more passing, but that did not prove itself so much. I know Denny Hamlin had a good car. And it looked like it was, Hendrick Motorsports up there running. Kyle Larson ran well up there. Chase Elliott was running well up there. And they were passing a lot of people. I mean, even going back to Xfinity, I think at one point when Ty Gibbs won one of the stages, I mean, he was out to a huge lead. So there wasn't so much going on with that as it goes to passing. Denny did well. The hot car. Christopher Bell had a hot car. Denny Hamlin had a hot car. Keselowski was up there in the running for a while, and he was doing fairly well. So, the big eye there was Denny Hamlin was fighting Ross Chasten. I think Ross was like 20 points below. I thought he might have been out. And, no, he wasn't out. I'll tell you that. So if you go back, and I know everybody's seen it now on social media, my goodness, what an end to that race. But, getting there, we had Denny took both stages. Ryan Blaney was running really well. He was up running top 5. Chase Briscoe running, I think I heard he ran the most top 5 out there, or his most running in the top 10, the most laps he's ran in the top 10 all season. So he was doing very well. I think I saw the 45 car up there running a little bit too. It was pretty lackluster until you get to the very last lap. The very last lap was nuts. So they were telling Ross Chastain, this is the battle between Ross and Denny, because Christopher Bell, he just put it in boss mode, and he did like what he did at the Roval and just went over and won himself in. So, congratulations to Seabell. He won, and he got in. He's riding that hot hand going in to Phoenix Sunday. So, you have, I'll give you a few of the people that got in. So, you have Seabell won his way in. You have Chase Elliott and Joey Logano. They are 3 of your top 4. Your last spot was kind of a fight between William Byron, Denny Hamlin, and Chase Elliott. I'm sorry, not Chase Elliott, Ross Chastain. And, they were getting into that final lap, and they got on the radio to Ross and said, hey, you need 2 more positions, 2 more to win this thing, or to advance, not win it. So he went in there and he just sent it. He sent it in. I think they said he got into 5th gear, which nobody was using 5th gear at all this race. And he just banged it off the wall and rode the wall all the way in and passed. He passed Denny Hamlin and he passed a few other people, and good night. He just rolled. And he made it in. He ran the fastest lap of a Cup Series car at Martinsville I think it was like an 18.7. I'm not 100% sure on that number, but they were saying it was the fastest lap ran by a Cup car, or actually I think it was a NASCAR sanctioned. It almost beat the unsanctioned cars that run there. So that was wild. I mean, people were loving it. Some of the guys listening to the radio, I think it was Joe Logano was sitting there watching, and he couldn't believe his eyes. He's like, oh my goodness, he just did that? So, he video gamed it. It's pretty much what he said, and he's right. It's something that you would see a kid, or even, yourself might have done, sitting there playing NASCAR on the Xbox, PlayStation, and just ran it right up the wall and rode the wall, bouncing your car off. The thing is he didn't hit anybody. He didn't take anybody out. Any of that. He just damaged his car. And man, he did it and he got in. Dividends paid for him. Now after the race, we heard a lot of people. They talked to Kyle Larson. They talked to Joey Logano. They talked to a few other people, and they started complaining about it. They did not like the way that he was able to run the wall and get on. They think NASCAR needs to change the rules about that. I think Larson was saying, he's like, yeah, that was kind of cool, but it doesn't look good for our sport. It's like, really? Out of your mouth, Larson? You tried that same move. A lot of people tried that same move. Carl Edwards tried that same move. There was a few other guys in the past that have tried it, and they have failed. He had enough to get it going and actually succeeded in doing it. So I think that's why they're a little bitter about it. In my opinion, I think it was awesome. I think it's kind of stupid. Logano made a comment saying, why don't we just make a rule that says if you bounce off the wall, hit the wall, driving, you can't gain a spot doing that. It's like, okay, so now we're going to have people, it's kind of like the double yellow line rule on super speedways, Talladega, Daytona, Atlanta. It's like, okay, I see that. It's got to happen. And you got somebody up running, second, third, and they need this. They need these stage points, or running, 10th, and they're about to get passed. Let me just run this guy up so he bounces off the wall, and now he can't pass me because he can't gain a spot by doing it. No, that doesn't fly. I think Larry McReynolds was saying something about if NASCAR does some rule changes, that is pretty poor on their part. And I saw a lot of social media comments, and NASCAR is getting the most awareness after the fact that this race happened in recent time. I mean, they made SportsCenter top 10. I think it was number 1 on SportsCenter. It's like NASCAR would be ignorant not to do something here. I think it's going to be stupid. I think the drivers need to just kind of shut up and let it roll. I mean, Ross has been ruffling a lot of feathers this whole season, the whole Denny Hamlin thing. Which, yeah, let's not penalize Denny Hamlin for running a driver up into the wall like he did at Pocono. I mean, come on, guys. NASCAR would, in my opinion, have a little bit more clout when it came to their penalties, came to all this stuff, if they would actually be consistent. There is no consistency that I see. You have somebody like Bubba Wallace did to Larson. Intent to hurt the guy. Intent to wreck him on purpose by just turning left into him. And they only suspended him a race? Get out of here with that. You can tell me that, oh, well, he doesn't have a history. He has a history. Go back and look. Then you go and you see, I'll use for a good example, the most recent one that happened. Kyle Busch. He's got a crew chief missing for 4 races. 4! Because a tire came off. Because of a lug system that they just changed and had issues with. Because it's one lug. I get it if you miss all 5 lugs and a tire falls off. But no, this is one lug, and the detents didn't kick on. This has happened so much. So many people have raised awareness about that tire falling off and that 4-race penalty for the crew chief and for one other person on the team. I feel bad for whoever's going to get that crew chief, because I don't know if he's going to be going over to the 8 car with Busch or not, but he's out for 2 races next year because it's going to continue on. NASCAR needs to revisit their rules. They should have revisited them whenever they put this new car out. They need to be a little bit more consistent on their penalties. I mean, the whole Briscoe penalty that happened with Custer and Stuart Haas losing that challenge, saying that they were manipulating the race. So I think NASCAR has a lot of work that needs to happen when it comes to the penalties. And if they're going to look at what Ross Chasten did, which brought them more people in to watch this race, then they have their priorities set in the wrong way. And I think they need to kind of tighten that up, or at least revisit it and figure things out as a whole on being more consistent. And I mean, you can't just, that's racing. He ran up against the wall. He took his own car. He could have wrecked his car and wrecked everybody behind him, and he would have been out. But no, it worked for him. And now people don't like that because it worked for him, especially if it was Ross. I bet you if it was somebody else, there wouldn't be as much chatter on, oh, we need to change the rules. But since Ross has been making a lot of waves, Trackhouse has been making a lot of waves this year, I think that's one of the big stinks. So one of the news that came out of this race was Tyler Reddick. Tyler Reddick left the race not feeling well. He went, some people think that it kind of attributed to something that happened at Homestead, but he rear-ended somebody, and he wasn't feeling good, so they brought the car in. They couldn't find anybody else to take it, so they retired the 8 car early. He put out on Twitter yesterday afternoon, he pretty much quoted, and I'll read it, quote, "Update on my current situation. During the restart at the beginning of the Stage 2, I was involved in a stack-up where significant contact occurred to my vehicle. After being evaluated in the infield care center, the medical team came to the conclusion that further evaluation today was the next step to take. We are taking those necessary steps to make sure I'm 100% before I am cleared to return to racing. I'm feeling better and working hard following the instructions of the medical team." Again, I get you don't want to change the rear clip on these cars, but hopefully they make these changes, and I think they are going to be making these changes going forward next year. So hopefully this stuff doesn't happen. This, the most concussions that we've seen, all that going on. So we'll see what that brings going forward. But congratulations to Ross for doing something nobody thought about doing. I mean, you got a car that you can. And sorry, I got to go back to Ross. You got a car, a full body stock car, and you can go out there and beat and bang on it, and somebody's going to complain that they shouldn't be doing that. I saw a comment from just some regular person on social media. They said, if I wanted to watch a race where passing was dictated by the governing body, I'd switch and watch Formula One. And he's got it right. NASCAR needs to keep some of their stigma, their stock cars. Bounce, beat, take, bounce off the wall, bounce off each other. Don't get in a bad mood if you get wrecked and you're racing somebody. Get mad if you get wrecked because somebody wanted to punch you through and didn't want to use their talent or didn't have the talent to pass you. There's a lot to make out from this past race. If I were NASCAR, I'd be looking at the positives, saying, look at all of the awareness that we received in the past 2 days for what happened in this race. We've reached more people than we could have even imagined. So, as of right now, NASCAR is not making a rule change. They did say they are going to revisit it. We'll see what happens going forward after that. But we are on to Phoenix next week. And we'll see who gets crowned our champions. I think Ross right now is running a hot hand. Ross and Christopher Bell are running a hot hand going into it. I know some drivers out there are going to be happy to get this over with. I mean, my driver that I like to follow, he's flat out upset me these past few races because I feel like he's given up. He ran, I think, 21st Saturday, last race. And I think that his crew chief, he needs a new crew chief. Can't do anything for him. Can't change the car to meet him. They can't interpret each other, speak to each other well. I think he needs a crew chief change, and I'm talking about the 19 car. So, I don't know, but we're coming to an end on the season. We're going to have a lot of moves coming up, I think, with people, hopefully in the lower levels, and we got more things to look forward to next year. I mean, Tyler Reddick's going to be running the 45 car. You potentially have Ty Gibbs running the 18 car. I don't think it's potential. I think it's going to be a given. Let's see what happens to him after everything that happened. So, we'll see what happens moving forward. I appreciate everybody listening today. I hope you guys have a good one, and I'll see you next week.